How's everybody doing today? Welcome to another episode of Life Coach, The Life Coach. The Life Coach Twitch, The Life Coach on YouTube, and The Life Coach Insta on Instagram. We're not posting on that, and I think that I'm posting to my actual profile on Facebook. But hey, we change things as we go. Please let me know, by the way, if you see a delay between the sound and my lips moving. It's one of the things that drives me nuts, and I think it has to do with my webcam service that I use, and that's unfortunate because if I turn it off, it starts to create that flip out thing that happens. Like, I actually figured out what the problem was, so kind of sucks. But let me know if it really bothers you. If it does, I will uninstall XSplit VCam. I don't need it anyway. I mean, I can get rid of it. So just let me know if it's bothering you. It's bothering me as it is right now, but we'll see. Change the microphone around. It's a little bit easier for me to talk through this, and also when I'm reading articles, it's easier for me to talk into the part that matters in the microphone. So, you know, it's the little things, the little changes that happen here in the studio. Suggestions by viewers like you. No, there's a lot of things that I try to change and improve on every week. I do put in a decent amount of time every week, every day to making this better and making this palatable and entertaining. And then there's days like today where I just have something to rant about. So before I piss everybody off and talk about the things that bother me about guilt, oh boy, there's going to be some unpopular opinion happening here today. And I'll give a disclaimer too before I get into it. I'll talk about the definitions. We're going to go over all that. I do want to go back through the starting screen just so you know. We're on holisticlifeconsultants.com. Become a member. You will get all the behind the scenes, behind the paywall. It's not that much. It's like $25 a week, and you get more intensive coaching specific to parent coaching, relationship coaching, life coaching, college coaching, and career. At the Life Coach Insta, that's me on Instagram, and / the Life Coach on YouTube. And obviously, if you're here on Twitch, it's the Life Coach Twitch. All right, so that's kind of the housekeeping stuff for today. I do want to get right to the mug of the day, which we have R2D2. I always have to move him over. Yeah, this is like literally probably my favorite mug. You can check it out if you are a subscriber to the channel. You get emotes, including the R2D2 emote. It's fantastic because this is like one of the best mugs ever made. It's well insulated, it's thick, it goes through the dishwasher and does not fade. It's as reliable as R2. I mean, what do you want? So here we go. We are going to sip this, so cheers. Fresh brewed coffee, by the way. I made some coffee right before this. I got pumpkin spice for the office, so, oh yes, it will be drank or drunk. Anyway, the point is, I'm not going to finish that second half of Wayne's World. But I will double sip. That is fantastic. All right. I hope that you had a hot, delicious beverage too. If you don't, it's okay. Don't be jealous. You can always go on a quick coffee break. I do those too. Watch this. I will be doing this later on. So no worries. Go get you some coffee, get some tea, get some hot water with lemon and ginger and honey in it. I don't care what you do. Just have something nice to drink and let's hang out. And listen to me basically disgust or piss you off about the fact that you feel guilty sometimes, because I'm about to make you feel guilty about feeling guilty. Seriously though, I hate guilt. And there's, we'll get into it. Okay, so first I want to start with the definition of guilt. We'll get into the technical stuff, and then I'll talk about more of, like, in the clinical world, what the actual debate is and what the issue is there. So we'll get into it, but I just want to start out with the APA dictionary of guilt. It is self-conscious emotion characterized by a painful appraisal of having done or thought something that is wrong, and often by a readiness to take action designed to undo or mitigate this wrong. It is distinct from shame, in which there's no additional strong fear of one's deeds being publicly exposed to judgment or ridicule. So I'll break this down because I actually think when most people say they feel guilty, they actually feel ashamed. And also, anyway, let's break this down. The self-conscious emotion characterized by a painful appraisal. So you're inflicting pain on yourself. That's the first thing about guilt. Of having done or thought, so even your thoughts are wrong, something that is wrong. Now, what's interesting about this is wrong. Who says it's wrong? You do. You're the beer thief. You think it's wrong. So you feel pain, which you're inflicting on yourself, because you have an appraisal that you did or thought something that you think is wrong. And then you're often, but not always, ready to take action designed to undo it. Which I actually don't think that's necessarily part of the feeling of guilt. That's something more related to contrition, like a mea culpa. Like you actually feel like you want to do something to undo the bad that you did. But that's not necessary. That has nothing to do with guilt. You don't have to feel like you're going to do anything about it in order to feel guilty. And in fact, what I find with most clients, when they suffer from chronic guilt, and a crippling guilt at that they have no intention of undoing the thing they did wrong, or in fact of doing anything to mitigate themselves from doing it again. Which is the sneakiness and the, I might use the E word, but the manipulative aspect of guilt. And the manipulation is to you. You're manipulating yourself. So let's talk some more about this. Don't love the APA definition. Right out of the gate, don't love the definition from the APA. All right, so let's not talk about that. We'll get into that in a second. I'm going to move that over. There's a guilt definition in Merriam-Webster, and I wanted to kind of talk about that because, it's more of a dictionary definition. The first one I like because it has to do with a fact. The fact of having committed a breach of conduct, especially violating law, and involving a penalty. So guilt in the sense of public guilt or justice guilt is a fact of the matter that you have done something that violates a law or a statute. Usually there's a penalty, but you violated the law. Stop, criminal scum. Like you've actually done something wrong. I like this because there's a matter of fact. It's not you saying you feel bad. It is a matter of fact. You're taking the facts of the matter and you're putting them together and saying, hey, you're not supposed to do X. You did X. You're guilty. Like we can prove you did it. So you are, in fact, guilty of violating standards. I love that. I think that that's great. And actually, in my opinion, again, this is an opinion stream today, and you may not like that opinion. My opinion is it is a matter of fact whether or not you're actually guilty of violating some law or rule or understanding. That's a matter of fact. You either did or you did not. So this whole idea that you feel guilty, it doesn't wash with that. It doesn't work here. So let's go to definition 2. But first, I'm going to take some more sip of my coffee. All right, so this one's important. The state of one who has committed an offense, especially consciously. So this involves intent. You're in the state of guilt. So his guilt was written in his face. So it's a statement of fact that this person has committed an offense. But especially they knew they did, right? So that's the second definition. And part deux of the second definition is feelings of deserving blame, especially for imagined offenses or from a sense of inadequacy. Oh. I love this one too because it's feelings of deserving blame, especially for imagined offenses. So you feel, which I hate when people use, and this, if you know me, this is one of my pet peeves. When people use the word feel instead of the word think. I first encountered this, and I'll tell you this is like an undergrad story. So back in the ancient times when I was an undergraduate and I did a double major in psychology and philosophy. in my philosophy classes that's where I first heard this nonsense, which was amazing to me because I was hearing it in philosophy classes, which would I think would be the last places where people would make that mistake. In my psychology classes. Cool, gotcha. It's all about feelings, even though it's not really. It's about thoughts and it's about behavior, if you're a behaviorist. But I heard in my philosophy classes, it snuck in, mostly from my contemporary continentalists, my postmodern philosophy friends, my postmodern philosophy professor. Shout out. I'm not going to say your name because I don't necessarily think you were great at philosophy, but it was definitely allowed, if not encouraged, to say things like, I feel that this aspect of, let's say, I don't know, existential philosophy doesn't make sense because of X, Y, and Z. I feel that even though we're in epistemology and metaphysics, I feel that this way of looking at the universe doesn't make sense. Well, making sense is something you think of, so I'm not sure how you feel it doesn't make sense. Feelings don't make sense. But I heard this, and it just kept being encouraged or allowed. And I'm like, how do you feel your thoughts? Like, I just don't understand. Please explain to me. So I said this in a couple of my smaller classes, my 300 and 400 level philosophy classes. I'm like, I just think that when people use the word feel instead of think, it's kind of a weasel word in order to get people to not argue with how you feel because, it's your feelings, man. And this caused a huge debate. It was kind of a problem. I didn't really cause a lot of problems in my philosophy classes, but that was one of them, is that I just don't believe you should be using the word feel when you're engaging in dialectical argument. Like you're talking about your thoughts. We're dealing with logic. We're trying to argue about positions in philosophy, and you're using words like I feel? Who cares how you feel about it? Like, what do you feel logic? It makes no sense. Anyway, this is the first place that I encountered this, and it was nonsense then, and it's nonsense now. It bled into the rest of society that people use the word feel when they're trying to tell you what they think, and it's either intentional or unintentionally a way to weasel in your argument so that people don't disagree with you. Another pet peeve of mine, and I'm guilty of this sometimes, so I try to really be careful about that, is when people use the word right ? In the middle of their argumentation as a way to get you to implicitly agree if you don't interrupt them and say, no, I disagree with that. And it plays mental games on you. It's actually a psychological warfare where you've already implicitly agreed to so many things that by the time we get to the end of their argument, you have to start way back and say, wait, I don't agree with the first thing that you said, but in your head you kind of have. So I don't like that. I don't like psychological warfare when it comes to philosophical arguments. That's a whole other story for a different day. When I'm talking about feeling instead of thought, that's the first place where I heard this, was undergraduate in philosophy. But I hear people talk about guilt as a feeling all the time. And it's just wrong. In my opinion, it's wrong. Now, I have people who will back me up, but it's not settled. But I think that I'm correct here because there are facts of the matter, whether it's a social contract, it's an explicit law, implicit understanding, cultural norms. There are all kinds of things that could make you guilty of violating a norm or a law or a policy or an agreement or breach of contract. There are plenty of ways in which you can factually be guilty. But part B here, feelings of deserving blame. So who is it that feels this way? You feel that you deserve blame for imagined offenses. So you imagine that you're guilty. I didn't tell you you're guilty. It's not a fact of the matter that you're guilty. In fact, it's your imagination that you've offended someone. Or, and this is what's really important about this definition that Merriam-Webster graces us with, which thank you for being more valuable than the APA. A sense of inadequacy. Self-reproach is the other word that they use, which I actually think is much more valuable as a way to describe how somebody feels, that they have self-reproach. They feel that they are nasty. Number 3, a feeling of deserving blame for offenses. Well, I mean, again, real or imagined, but let's go to self-reproach. It's always a different voice. It's always a different voice. But harsh criticism or disapproval of oneself, especially for wrongdoing. This is really interesting. A lot of people who say they feel guilty are really their worst critics, and they disapprove of themselves. Whether that's because they did something wrong or they believe they did something wrong, really what it is, or they feel inadequate. That's self-reproach. It's not a matter of fact that they did anything wrong. So the feeling is something more akin to self-hatred, self-loathing, feeling of it being inadequate. So this is a judgment, but it's an internal judgment. So here's the deal. I'm going to switch back out of this because I don't want you to be distracted by the screen that I'm distracted by. But here's the deal. You determined, so that's a decision, that's an action, whether that's just mental or you said it out loud. So it's either a public or a private behavior. You decided there's a standard that you don't meet. You're inadequate. You've been found wanting. But you decided that. So you're the judge, you're the jury, and then you're the executioner because you start to loathe yourself because you decided you're not good enough for the standards that you set in place for yourself. Huh? How did we get here? What is this? This is essentially a form of mental masturbation. I've talked about this for years, that it is completely self-serving. It is self-aggrandizing. In a way, it's a bit narcissistic. And hear me out on why this is. You would have to really think that you're better than everybody else. And I mean this. You must think you're better than everybody else. That you feel that you breached some magical standard that you don't hold anybody else to, but you violated. And because you're so special that you're held to a higher standard and you didn't meet that standard, it's up to you to punish yourself because nobody else is really going to do it. Nobody else is really going to see it because, they're dumb. They don't really get it. And they don't hold you to as high of a standard because, they're not as good as you. They're not as pure. They're not as moral. They're not as potent. They're just, they're the plebes. So you beat yourself up for yourself so that you feel better about yourself. Because you beat yourself up over what you feel you should have done better because you think so highly of yourself. You hold yourself to such a standard. And the worst part is that the lie you tell to yourself afterward is that you think lowly of yourself. And that logically doesn't make sense. And I don't feel that way. I think that way. And you do too. It is a cognitive process. You're going through a process. I am so great that I should be amazingly behaved well. I didn't behave well. I don't deserve to be treated the way everybody else is. And since nobody else is up for it, I'm going to punish myself to appease myself, who is the bastion of all high moral standards. And then I can feel better about myself for beating myself up. And then on the icing on the cake, I'm going to be falsely modest and say that it's because I think so lowly of myself that I beat myself up. But only compared to the standard that I set for myself because I am, in fact, the bastion of all moral standards. That's what guilt is, in my opinion. I'm not the only one that thinks that way. And I'm not the only one. I'm not. I don't think that's true. But I do believe, based on years and years of working with people who feel guilty, they tend to be the ones that think they're more capable than other people of doing well. They're more capable of following higher standards. They're more morally pure than other people. And these are the things they would not deign to say to another mere mortal like myself. But it's always behind every statement. And if you push somebody who constantly feels guilty, you'll get that narcissistic anger. You ever challenged a narcissist? Have you ever challenged the ego of a narcissist? Rage. Not just anger. Everybody gets annoyed when you challenge their ego, but a narcissist gets enraged because their ego is so big, but so fragile, that when you poke at it and you start to put the lens on them, they get very, very, very angry. Try confronting somebody who's trying to give you all the guilt, tell you all the things they're guilty about. Try confronting that person about their higher standard for themselves and how they maybe think they're better than everybody else because, in fact, everybody sucks sometimes. Good luck with that. Let me know how that goes. You'll see that guilty look turn into a scowl very quickly. And I'm not just talking out of my ass here. I mean, I have plenty of experience with clients and soon to be not clients anymore about that. But it doesn't matter if you like it. People come to you or they come to me, they come as a friend, they come as a family member, and they will complain about how guilty they feel. You got to ask yourself, why are you telling me this? What can I do to alleviate your guilt? Besides tell you it's not that big a deal, you're not a bad person, it's not that bad, I forgive you, I didn't feel that hurt, I wasn't offended. Think about what that is, the manipulation. Whether intentional or unintentional, it's a manipulation. Oh, woe is me, I feel so bad for myself and about myself because I did this horrible thing that I really shouldn't have done. Enter the positive comments, please. What's the positive response here? What is it that you're being expected to say? Because if it was guilt, let's go back to guilt. The fact of having committed a breach of conduct, especially violating law or involving a penalty. Let's just go there. Let's say that they in fact committed a crime and they come to you and say, I feel guilty. Again, I'm not sure why you feel guilty because the fact of the matter is you did rob the store, so you are guilty. You did cheat on them, so you are guilty. I mean, it's just a matter of fact. So you feel guilty or do you know you are? Doesn't make a lot of sense to say they feel guilty if it's a fact of having committed a breach, does it? How do you feel that you've done something that is factually accurate? That doesn't make any sense. Let's look at number 2. The state of one who has committed an offense, especially consciously. So you know you did it. Is that our second option? You know you did it? Okay, so what do you want me to say? You feel guilty because you are guilty and you did something knowing it was wrong? You didn't feel guilty when you were doing it, did you? So do you really feel guilty or do you feel regret, remorse, fear, anxiety that you're going to get caught, anxiety about the fact that you were caught? What is it that you feel? Because you don't have to feel guilty. You are guilty from number 2A. Number 2B. Is this the scenario? You feel that you deserve blame for an imagined offense and you feel inadequate. Why would you bother saying that you feel guilty? Wouldn't you let somebody else identify if you violated conduct, you violated a law, you've done something wrong? And if nobody else thinks that you have, but you feel you have, you feel inadequate, why wouldn't you just say inadequate? If you feel like you've broken some kind of rule, can't you just tell me what you think you should have done? And if what you're telling me is you believe that you should have acted better than everybody else in the room, aren't you just kind of humble bragging that you're better than everybody else? Or you should be better than everybody else because you have a higher capacity to act morally than everybody else? Seems pretty haughty. Pretty braggart to say, I feel like I violated some imaginary principle that nobody else has to follow, just me. So when you're coming to me saying you feel guilty, is that the one that you feel? If it's number 3, that you feel that you deserve blame for offenses, there are facts of the matter. What are these offenses? And if what you're telling me is, I lied, I cheated, I stole, I manipulated other people, well, in fact, you are guilty. So how would you like me to console you? This is my issue with guilt. You either are or you're not. And if you're making it up, it's kind of worse because it's like saying you committed a crime that you didn't commit. It's kind of gross. It's just bad. And then you're guilty of bothering me for something you didn't really do and making me have to bend over backwards to try to make you feel better about yourself because you are being manipulative. And guess what? You're guilty of that. So what does it mean to say you feel guilty? I don't think it means anything. I think it's a misuse of the English language. I can't speak for other languages because I don't speak them all. But in this case, I think it's an abuse of the word guilt. I think it's more akin to feeding an ego, believing you're better than other people, broadcasting that in a weirdly backhanded, narcissistic, egotistical way, or finding ways to get and manipulate other people into praising you, soothing you, comforting you. It all just seems pretty bad. So let me know if you don't agree. Let me know, please. Let me know if you think that I am way off the mark on what guilt is, and that guilt is this legitimate feeling that needs to be addressed and isn't really bad and isn't self-serving. I'd love to hear the arguments for it. Because I got to tell you, guilt is on the market and it is profitable. I'm going to show you an article to prove what I mean. Dealing with guilt, the 3 types and how to let them go. And this is under an article that says philosophy. Not psychology, but philosophy. So there's philosophy of guilt, apparently, from yogajournal.com. So you know it's going to be legit. You'll notice a giant lack of sources cited in this article and a lack of technical definitions, psychological phenomena, anything, really anything. And I want to be really clear about who Sally Kempton is because she's the writer of this article, and I'm not trying to rag on her. I believe in holistic methods of making yourself feel better, but I do think that experts kind of should stay in their lane to some degree. It's not that psychology has it all together, obviously, because this definition sucks from the APA. So I just want to be clear about some of the disclaimers here. I'm not really trying to rag on her, but also I am trying to rag on the fact that people make money off of guilt. It's a whole industry. Letting go of guilt, not feeling guilty, all that. It's a whole industry. So there are 3 kinds of guilt, which, by the way, I've never heard of. And you don't want to carry any of them around with you. Duh. Learn about dealing with guilt and how to let it go. Now, this is an old article. This is like 2009. So let's chill out about, she probably has learned and knows better now. But Sally, you done made a mistake writing this article. She starts with a person. I don't care about this person. Anyway, she tells you right off the bat, there are 3 types of guilt. Yes, I did just basically dismiss her whole story at the beginning. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Read the article if you want to read the article. yogajournal.com. Look up philosophy of guilt. You'll find it. Okay. Dealing with natural guilt. So there's natural guilt. This is amazing. Suppose you feel guilty about something immediate and specific. Putting a dent in the car of a friend lent to you, or lying to your boyfriend about where you were last night. That's what I call natural guilt. Well, I'm glad that she at least just says I call it that. That's good, because we don't have any sources cited that tells us that there are any different types of guilt. So I have no idea where she's coming from with this, but she calls it natural guilt when she dings a car or lies to her boyfriend. Awesome. You can tell you're suffering from natural guilt because it's local. Again, I don't know what that means. It relates to your actions in real, present time. Apparently, that's what local means. Anyway, moving on. Natural guilt can be horribly painful, especially if there's serious damage involved. So there's pain when damage is involved. Again, not sure what that has to do with guilt. Hold on, I'm going to sneeze. I'm going to try to mute it. I'm going to mute the microphone. Did I save all your ears? Awesome. Okay. Natural guilt can be horribly painful, but even if what you did was really, really bad, local guilt is repairable. Reparable? Repairable. I think repairable. You can make amends. Sure can. You can apologize. You can ask for forgiveness, pay your debt, Resolve to change your behavior, and once you repair things, the guilt should dissolve. Again, great giving out, mental health advice. Right? Yeah, that's not really how it works. Forgiveness, by the way, has nothing to do with whether or not you apologize. We can go into forgiveness if you want. Just put something in the chat or whatever. We could talk about forgiveness, but has nothing to do with apologizing. Just so you know. If not, see the section on toxic guilt. Natural. So she goes, I'm not reading the whole article, but natural guilt apparently has a shadow side. So now we have 3 types of guilt. We have natural guilt, which is local, and it has a shadow side. Now, I have no idea where local comes from and how she defines it as just being in time, like right now, and something you just did. And I have no idea where shadow side's technical definition comes from, but these words work because they sound bad. It often turns into a major instrument of parental and social control. Okay? An old joke captures this perfectly. How many Jewish mothers does it? Of course you got to pick on Jewish mothers. All right, but anyway. How many Jewish mothers does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. Don't worry. I'll just sit here in the dark. I grew up Catholic, and I know plenty of Jewish mothers, and the guilt is real, but that joke was not funny. Spouses and partners do. Everybody knows about manipulation through guilt. People manipulating other people by making them feel guilty. So this is an entirely different thing, but I do love how it gets to the core of how guilt is almost always used for manipulation. So kudos to this article for kind of telling us more about what I was already saying. Have you ever been guilt tripped by a vegan friend who caught you eating salmon? No. Don't be around those people. If somebody tries to guilt you into eating something or not eating something, just no. In fact, natural guilt gone wrong, that is when it's too harshly punished or used as a weapon of control, manipulation, can quickly become toxic. I agree with this. In a lot of ways, I think she's onto something, that guilt is toxic and manipulative. I actually think she really is onto it. Genuinely, I'm not being facetious. I genuinely think that this woman is onto something saying that guilt is toxic and manipulative. I just think that she is lumping a bunch of other things together and calling them all guilt, and then telling you that there are 3 different types of guilt instead of trying to define different things for what they are, not all of which are guilt. Does that make sense? Like, we can decipher the difference between guilt and fear, right? Like, I said right, question mark. But I genuinely mean, right? Like, because if I'm wrong, I'd love for you to let me know. Please disagree. But what she's saying is there's guilt, and that's fine, and then there's guilt that's not fine, and that's the kind that's manipulative, but I'm not really sure about what the guilt is that's fine because it's you feeling bad about doing something wrong locally right then. But the shadow side is toxic of natural guilt, but there's a separate guilt that's called toxic guilt. Oh my God. It's like, I don't understand. Like, I know you need to write an article, but why are you calling it 3 different types of guilt when you just got done saying the shadow side or the tails side of the coin of natural guilt is toxic guilt? And then you have number 2, toxic guilt. Like, whew. All right. Toxic guilt. Hold on. Toxic guilt is what happens when natural guilt festers. Poor Uncle Fester. He has the worst name. It manifests as a nagging feeling of pervasive but non-specific badness. I can't. Who talks like this? Toxic guilt manifests as a nagging feeling of pervasive but non-specific badness. If you know what that means, please type it in the chat. I have no clue what the hell that's supposed to mean. As if your whole life has something wrong with it. So, hold on. What's one of the feelings of guilt? a sense of inadequacy. Again, she's got something here. She's got something right. Like, I think that she is trying to write an article, but I also think that she's on to at least, like, she understands guilt. I think that maybe she's speaking to a different audience than me and hopefully you. An audience that really understands this language and just resonates with words like nagging feelings of pervasive but non-specific badness. Maybe that's like there is a group of people who are like, And those are the people who agree with this. It's the people who say, when you're saying something that like is correct and they want to like, I don't know what they want to do, but those people, like they say something that they agree with, or like, you say something that is just factually true and it resonates with them and they're just like, and not like they like enjoyed it and not like they're in pain. It's a different kind of It's not an M&M and it's not like a really good steak, like and it's not a sexual It's like a, I don't know, it's just like a weird like almost like an ohm, but without the O. I hope you know what I'm talking about, because I've definitely encountered these people before. And maybe those are the people who resonate with this language to say things that really have a lot of truth to them. Like, so far, not so bad. I'm just really picking this apart because it's one of my topics that potentially I could be writing a book on this, like a whole dissertation on this. So forgive me for being a little bit of a nerd about guilt, but it really bothers me when people misuse feelings and language surrounding feelings, particularly guilt, because it is so easily manipulative. And I just want to be clear about this. Like, I'm not just picking on people who feel guilty because I'm just a jerk. Like, I am a jerk, but that's not what's going on here. I genuinely believe people misuse guilt and they're not ever going to get better from it, and people are going to continue to be manipulated by them, and they're going to continue to manipulate themselves until they realize the feelings that they're feeling are not necessarily guilt, but they can be lack of confidence, lack of courage, lack of integrity. They do factually know they've done something wrong, and they're afraid of the consequences. They're afraid of being caught. They are ashamed. There are all kinds of things that people can feel, but guilt itself is a factual matter, in my opinion. And you can clip that. This type of free-floating guilt is the hardest kind to deal with because it arises from lingering patterns, or samskaras. Where the hell did this come from? Lodged in your subconscious. What? Okay. Anyway. How can you expiate your sin or forgive yourself for something when you don't know what it is you did, or when you believe that what you did is essentially irreparable? I feel like that's a fair question. Forgiveness is one of the oldest things that human beings have sought, I think, in recorded history, at least. I mean, what is Christianity but an answer to the question, who will forgive me for what I have done? I mean, the whole phrase, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. That's what I was taught when I got my first Holy Communion and we were talking about like going to confession. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. The idea is that God can forgive your sins no matter how egregious or how light, because he sees them all as equal, even though there are cardinal sins and somehow they're worse, and there's venial sins that are not worse, but they're all the same. I never really got to make sense of that part because it doesn't make sense. It seems contradictory. But anyway, that being said, it seems that the religion of Christianity is focused on forgiveness. So it does seem like forgiveness is a really difficult thing for us to have for ourselves. Grace, I call it being nice to yourself. We're really good at beating ourselves up and being mean to ourselves. I just think that the place that lives is an arrogant place. I think it's worse than you think it is that you feel you've done something that you can't forgive yourself for. And I hate to say that, but I do think it comes from a place of toxic ego, just a horribly large ego that you believe that you're so much better than everybody else, that you've done something that you can't forgive yourself for, even if somebody else can be forgiven. So that's something to talk about. I think that's interesting. All right, let's continue. To some extent, this particular type of guilt seems to be an unintended byproduct of Judeo-Christian culture. Nailed it. a residue of the doctrine of original sin. Yogic texts like the Bhagavad Gita and the Yoga Sutra do not recognize non-specific guilt, though they do say quite a bit about sin, karma, and how to avoid or purify transgressions. Yeah, the Bhagavad Gita. That's something that I read when I was in college as well, because my focus was on the philosophy of religions. Never read the Yoga Sutra, but the idea that obviously they didn't recognize specific guilt is cool. I get it, because I don't really understand what non-specific guilt is. That, like, I'm just kind of a piece of crap long term. Doesn't matter what I do or not do. I just kind of feel bad about myself. It just seems like an ER kind of thing. Well, I just can't get my tail to stay on, so I guess I'm a lesser toy. Like, I guess. I don't know if that's guilt so much as depression. Again, maybe it is just feeling like you're not meeting standards, but I do think that has an uglier side than you think, which is that you believe you're better than everybody else, or should be. Either way is not good. We need to work with toxic guilt not only to alleviate the pain that it causes us, but also because accumulated feelings of guilt build up and attach themselves to any current transgression, even very minor ones, causing negative self-talk and bad feelings that are out of proportion to the offense. So, let's pause there. Negative self-talk does make you feel bad, but that's not guilt. That's berating yourself and feeling like you're low value. Bad feelings come from that. Out of proportion to the offense? I don't know. What if you murdered somebody? Are we saying that, man, somebody murdered somebody and they're just holding on to this general guilt, and that's really toxic, so they should let it go? Or did they kill somebody? Now, you may be forgiven by somebody else, but I don't know. There are some things that cannot be undone, and believing that you may be of lower value to society. For instance, I'm not saying morally lower value or lower value in the eyes of God or whatever you believe. But truly, if there is a fact of the matter that you are a murderer and there is a non-murderer, and we were to value somebody in society, and I always say in society because societal value is reality. That's what we live in. I don't care if you like it. I don't care if you agree with it. I don't care if you believe in something higher than society. I just said it. We live in a society, damn it. I said it. We live in a society. You have to deal with your societal value, social value. Now, I'm not talking about social credit score, which has to do with whether or not you pay your debt to some multi-billion-dollar company or smoke cigarettes on the train. I'm talking about your actual value in society. It is a negative value if you are taking the lives of other people. And it's a positive value if you're adding to the lives of other people. Those are objective facts, in my opinion, which is kind of weird to say. Maybe I feel that those are true. But there is a definitive yes or no, 0, 1, on, off, black or white to that. You either are detracting from society with your behavior in a major and irreparable way, or you're not. I mean, let me know in chat if you believe, or even in a comment later on, if you think that two people are equal in societal value, one of which has taken a life and one of which is not. Maybe you just have an accurate evaluation of yourself. I talked about this with somebody recently, and again, this is no slight on this person, and I'll probably go on a little bit of a rant here, but I was talking to a client about their social value because it was another case where this person really felt guilty all the time. And we kind of peeled the layers back, and she agreed that it wasn't really guilt, but it was in fact some self-loathing, some depression, some fear of consequences, and the knowledge that her social value did not meet her expectations of what she should be like. So there is certain things that she believed that she should be doing as a member of society that she wasn't doing. And there are certain things she was doing that were taking away from people that she loved and cared about. So the facts of the matter, if we were to put her up on like a trial of her moral standards, she was guilty. It doesn't mean she's a bad person, but she recognized that she was actually engaging in behavior that was hurting the people around her and not benefiting anybody around her, and certainly not benefiting herself, and she wasn't a self-sufficient, productive member of society. I think it's okay to not feel good about that. Maybe that's controversial. I think that it's okay. to get a little pissed off at yourself for not being self-sufficient. I think it's okay for you to beat yourself up a bit, not forever, but beat yourself up a bit about not being a productive member of society, for your social value to be negative. I'm not saying everybody has to make all the money in the world, but your social value being negative can be measured. If like you are there in a situation and it's taking resources away from people you care about, that's a negative. If you're adding to the coffers of your family or your friends or a church or a community in different ways, whether that's emotional support, you're always showing up, you're always setting the table, you're always putting out pamphlets, you're always saying good things about people, you're showing up on live streams, for instance, you're a mod. Oh my God, mods. You're like the unsung heroes of the internet. You're providing a lot of social value. It's not just money, but there is a way to show whether or not you're adding value to the people around you and to society. And it's up to you, I guess, and some other people around you to maybe like gut check you on whether or not you're being productive. But I just don't think it's a bad idea to beat yourself up for a minute and get mad about not being positive and being a net negative. What's the alternative? Guilt? You're going to feel bad now? You're going to go sit and feel guilty? Sit in the corner, feel bad about yourself, and then tell me that that's why you can't do what you need to do in the morning because you feel so guilty? You feel guilty about the fact that you're not productive, so you can't be productive because your guilt is overwhelming you? Is that where we're at? That's why I said on the whiteboard, guilt is the most selfish process we engage in. I believe it's a process. I don't think guilt is actually an emotion. I think it's a thought process. I think it's one that can make us feel bad, but I think that guilt is a process where we beat ourselves up because we're not meeting our own standards. We know it, but instead of doing something about it, we decide to make ourselves feel like trash, and we hurt ourselves to appease ourselves so we can go about our business of not doing what we feel we should be doing because we've gone ahead and felt guilty. Not productive, not useful, not helpful, but it does service your ego. And that's all it serves. That's it. It services your ego. That's my belief on guilt. You can disagree. I'm going to give you time to disagree. I'm going to go on a BRB LOL. I'm going to refill my coffee from my freshly brewed coffee pot. I'm going to put on some more music for you so you can listen to that while I get on there, and we will be right back. energy and an even fresher attitude. I just got a message about the guilt thing, and I hope that you talk about it in chat, because I do want to address it. I just don't think those things are real, and I'll go through them and I'll look them up before I go into the academic article, and I will talk about the third part of guilt that they talk about here in this article, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at what they say. It really is fun talking about things that are controversial. I really do enjoy it. Because it's okay if you disagree with me. You're allowed to be wrong, but it's okay. And I mean, what fun would it be if I just said things that everybody agreed with all the time? It's actually one of my things that I hate. And let me just pause this for a minute so that I can rant about that before we move on to the article. I'm so sick of being online and just watching people say things that I agree with all the time. And I do my best to find people who disagree with me, and I have a cornucopia of channels that I subscribe to on all kinds of platforms. And still, I mean, I was listening to a live stream this morning, and I'm not going to say who it was because I actually really enjoy their channel, and they're usually very, very funny. But man, they were just going on about something that I not only have heard a million times before, but like I agree with. Like I already agree, and there was not really like a ton of evidence about it. Even when there was, I was like, okay, but like, so what? Like, what am I supposed to do with this now? Like, you're just handing me this crap again, and I don't know what to do about it. I already think it's true. I already agree. You're not like saying any new way to handle it. You're not helping me at all. Like, and this is a frustration that I think I've had with the internet in general. And so my obvious response to feeling like social media and the internet is not giving me what I want is to lean into it and start being more interactive with it. Of course, I mean, that's just how I roll. But it does encourage me. It reinforces me to actually try to give you guys something of value to talk about, to discuss, to introspect about, really self-evaluate, but then also some tools of how to help yourself in real life. Notice everything I've talked about today has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with modern, shit that's going on online or with celebrities or whatever. It's just, I'm trying to stay away from that as much as I can. You can't get away from it, and you will hear me talk about current events and different things that are going on, celebrity things once in a while. I'll use them as examples. But I do think there's value to talking about the stuff that we all face and the things that we take for granted. And I think guilt's one of those things that we take for granted. That's one of the reasons why I'm picking on it. And it's one of the reasons, by the way, I have picked on it for years, because I think everybody takes for granted that they're going to get a positive response when they tell somebody they feel guilty. And I almost always shock people when I come in hot about how it's the most ridiculous, selfish, self-centered, self-serving, masturbatory feeling, and not really a feeling process that you can engage in. And it just shocks people. And a lot of times it shocks people out of that comfort zone of beating themselves up. Because I don't think it's okay to beat yourself up. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough energy to beat yourself up. But I also think we don't have enough time and energy to sit and listen to people who agree with us all the time. So hopefully what I'm providing you is something that you disagree with, maybe is controversial, maybe pisses you off a little bit, but you kind of either want to argue with me about or you want to look into more before you agree or disagree. I hope. And hopefully there's something for you to talk with your friends and family about, that you have friends and family. If you don't, please reach out to me directly, DM me on here, send me an email, ericallen@holisticlifeconsultants.com. Seriously, if you don't have friends or family, let's talk. I'd like to help with that. You should have people that love you and argue with you all the time in your life. You should have friends and family that love you and hate what you have to say once in a while. It makes life more spicy and entertaining. It's just a positive thing. So please let me know if you don't have that. I'd be happy to discuss with you how to get those back. I think we all start with something. And if you haven't started with anything and you're here, holy shit, you deserve accolades because you've made it, and you still deserve to have both, friends and family. That being said, I'm going to keep going on with the third aspect of guilt that is discussed in this article. and that is existential guilt. This is the one that's the most, it's the closest to concepts of guilt that are in literature. Hey, Jay, what's going on, man? I owe you an email, actually. I owe you, not you, but you know what I mean. I'm going to help you out on that. I have to send that stuff out to your person, but it's great to see you, man. It's good to see you on here. Jay Holloway is a part of the team. He is one of our market partners. He's a great guy, and he's somebody that you should get to know if you haven't. And you can find him, I think, on Twitch. If you, I don't know, Jay, if you want to put your information out there, you can if you want. You don't have to, but he's a great guy, and I love him. He's just awesome. So hello, and welcome to the Facebook stream. It's cool that you found me on Facebook and not Twitch. Let's talk about dealing with existential guilt. Your guilty feeling could also be social or political, which, again, I'm not going to get into the politics, but it exists. This is the guilt you feel when you see pictures of animals in a pen or read about the suffering in Zimbabwe. You know, like you talk about like the, there's starving kids somewhere, wherever that is. I imagine that if you're in Africa and somebody's yelling at you about starving kids, oh, awesome. Thank you for putting your Twitch up. Jay Holloway 2, just check that out. It's definitely worth your time to hang out. He's just a good guy. He's been through some things. He's seen some things, and he stays positive. He's a man that you could get a lot of inspiration from. So, existential guilt. It's one of those things where you see stuff in the world, the natural evils of the world, and you feel bad. Now, again, this woman says, I call this existential guilt. Well, she didn't invent or coin the phrase existential guilt. Let's be real. That's not the thing. Existential guilt is quite real and even reasonable. What? I don't agree with that. That's one of those things, like, I don't agree with that. You can't just say that. Where's your sources cited that that's reasonable? I disagree, madam. So what does she say right before that? Recognize the radical privilege of your life compared to the lives of many others. So this is a specific feeling, and it has been attributed to existential guilt. I think there's something else that could be called, but anyway, there is a self-awareness where you know you're doing better than other people and you feel bad about it. Badly. My friend Vicky would kill me if I just said bad. Badly. You feel badly about it. Even though I heard that there's a disagreement about the LY thing too. But that's a whole other story for a different day, and I'm not an expert. Maybe I'll bring her on as the expert in the English language. That would be fun, actually. We could argue for old time's sake. Let's argue. Essentially, there's no way to live life on Earth without having some sort of negative impact on others. Whoa. True. That's a great point. I just think that's a fact of the universe. Whether it's the owls who lost their homes when trees were cut down for your office park, or the plants you trample while walking in nature, or the fact that your child got a space in a great public school and lots of your friends' children didn't. I don't know how that works, but anyway. Often the resources we use to live, even to live simply, mean that those same resources are not available to others. So this is like the theory of scarcity. There's only so many pieces of pie. If you take a piece of pie away, there's more people than there are slices of pie. There you go. So you might have had a very lucky lot, and that means that other people had to not have the things that you had. Now, this is a logical fallacy, because the fallacy here is in the assumption that because you have something, it has been taken away from somebody else. And that doesn't logically follow. If I breathe air in, it does not suck it out of your lungs. Simple way to express how that is nonsense. Your fortune isn't because you have made someone else unfortunate. Someone else's misfortune is not why you're fortunate. Then this is the crux of existential guilt. Again, why I don't believe it's real, and thank you for the person who sent me that you believe that it is real. It's not. It's not because it's not. It makes no sense. It is, again, a way to make yourself more powerful than you really are. You're not a sorcerer or a sorceress that is magicking away somebody else's fortune by stealing it for yourself. I mean, that's superstitious nonsense. It's not existential guilt. Dude, I'm so glad you're on one of these too. This is great. I'm really glad to have you. So this is the idea of existential guilt is this idea that I'm not going to talk about her story of the beautiful, wealthy woman and this. Again, I don't care. It's not that I don't care about her or her made-up friend that perfectly fits into her example because it's not a real story. And again, I'm not trying to be that cynical, but I am being a bit cynical. I don't care about that. The idea is that it's easy to understand why a person might feel the burden of existential guilt. The Vedic sages, whose wisdom is at the root of all the yogic traditions, taught that we have certain basic debts to our ancestors, to the earth, to our teachers, to God, and to everyone who's helped us. When we don't pay those debts, we suffer from existential guilt. So, this fits under one of, again, my number one peeves in life, which is that people have been taught that success is evil, that money is the root of all evil, success is bad, you need to hide your successes because you should somehow feel guilty about doing well. I want everybody to do really well. I don't care. I want you to be as rich and as powerful and happy as possible. Try not to ruin everybody else's life in the meantime, but I don't feel personally slighted or offended if you are more successful or you're happier or you're richer than I am. I just don't. And I think that this idea of this breeds a couple things. If it's okay for me to feel guilty about being successful, guess what that means? I can think about you when you're more successful than I am. You see how that works? If I am to beat myself up for being happier than other people, then I should be able to beat up somebody else who's happier than me. Yeah, I do want to have, I don't know, man. I hate Twitter. I really hate Twitter. I appreciate the suggestion. I just really hate Twitter. I think Twitter is a cesspool of bots. And I think that whistleblower that came out recently and basically exposed that they don't have any control over the bots proves that there's more fake accounts on there than real ones. I don't know who I'm really broadcasting to. And it's not like I have a Twitter following anyway. I would just rather be on literally anywhere else to spread the word. I would rather go tell my friends outside than go on Twitter and let everybody know that I'm going to be live. I have the ability to. It literally allows me to post on Twitter because I have a Twitter. It's the Life Coach. I think it's the Life Coach. It's either Holistic Life Consultants or it's Life Coach on Twitch or on Twitter. I just don't do it because I just hate it. Hey, Nightmare Gamer, what is going on, my friend? Good to have you on here. I know, it might help spread the streams. It also depends on if people follow me on Twitter, and that's just an investment I'm not sure I'm willing to engage in. Maybe I'll hire somebody, I'll outsource somebody to run my Twitter page for me because I just can't. I can't. Yeah, man, I'm just chilling too. Just hating on haters. I'm just, honestly, Nightmare Gamer, what I'm doing today is I am dismantling the idea that guilt is somehow virtuous, and I'm ripping on the idea that guilt is a feeling, and I'm talking about being a process, and a nasty manipulative one at that. And one that has a lot of really negative connotations. So right now what I'm doing is I'm talking trash about looking at Heim. I'm not sure what that means. But yeah, what I'm doing right now is I'm talking about how existential guilt is a terrible idea because it follows along the superstitious traditions and I think the very unhealthy belief system that success is evil and your success is always at the expense of others. Therefore, you should feel guilty about being successful because that therefore logically encourages you to feel negatively about others who are more successful than you because logically they must have taken something from you, the less fortunate, for them to have been fortunate. It breeds resentment. It breeds jealousy. It breeds greed. And it's just a nasty cycle. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we could talk about that, actually. That could be cool. I could see that. So that's where I just think that this all becomes very obviously ugly when you start to unveil the natural, logical consequences of this system. In a system where you believe that you are justified in being guilty about your own success because it must take from others, then you naturally feel just fine talking shit about somebody else who's more successful than you because they're obviously taking from you. It can't be one way and not the other way. This is one of my favorite things to say is that you can't have it both ways. This is something that my dad has told me for years and years and years. Again, my source cited, my dad. Again, this is not like some psychologist or whoever has told me this, but it is a logical truth that you cannot simply have something that is true in this environment and its opposite is untrue. So it's one of those like if P, then Q, if not P, then not Q. So if it's a requirement. So there is a logical process to looking at this. And I don't know if I'm going to continue to read this. Anyway, she talks about how to let guilt go, and she's an internationally recognized teacher of meditation and yogic philosophy. So if you're into yogic philosophy, maybe she is a recognized scholar, but I'm not there. Anyway, don't love it. Pisses me off. Don't love like the idea of 3 types of guilt. And she doesn't even get the 3 types of guilt correct. Like there are 3 different types of guilt. I will go ahead and find you the 3 different types of guilt. What are the 3 types of guilt? There's natural guilt, which is the remorse over something you just did. There's free-floating or toxic guilt, which is the underlying sense of not being a good person. And there's existential guilt, the negative feeling that arises from the injustice that you perceive in the world. She doesn't even really necessarily hit all those 3, but all of those 3 are wrong. If anything, the remorse that you feel about doing something in the immediate is because you feel like you're going to have a consequence for that. And so there's a fear factor there. Or, again, you feel that you are better than everybody else and you're going to beat yourself up over doing something wrong. Or the fact of the matter is you did something that is egregious. The fact is you're guilty of something wrong, in which case it doesn't feel like necessarily a bad idea to maybe reevaluate yourself and try to create more positive than the negative that you've put out into the world. So that has to do with contrition or remorse, which is different than guilt, because guilt is simply beating yourself up. It doesn't require remorse, and it doesn't require the desire to undo the bad you did in the world, whereas remorse requires contrition. Contrition is the attempt, I don't know if it's successful, the attempt to undo the bad that you've put out into the world, the net negative, and make yourself a net positive. And that all comes back to social value. That's what I was talking about before. So anyway, I just wanted to give those 3 definitions because, yes, there's people who believe those things exist, but okay, I don't agree. So there's an article on PubMed that addresses some of the stuff that I talked about. The Theory of Guilt Appeals, a review showing the importance of investigating cognitive processes as mediators between emotion and behavior. Now, again, this is a very academic journal article. You can read it if you want. It's from PubMed. You can search Theory of Guilt Appeals. You will find it, and I absolutely believe that you can read it and you will understand as much as you can. But I'm not going to go into all of that. But what the contention of this article is that these feelings of guilt are not necessarily emotions, but that there are emotions that come from the cognitive process of guilt. Am I able to copy my YouTube here? I'm not sure if I can copy my YouTube. Let me see. I'll go to my live. Here's my channel. Let's see if I can do that. Boom. I mean, I suppose that's my channel. Look, it's me. All right, good. I'm just checking to see if there's any comments on there that I didn't see from the comments on here, because I have the Twitch and I have the multi-stream. I see Nightmare Gamer, you're on Twitch. I see you, Jay, you're on Facebook. So I just want to make sure I wasn't missing anything on YouTube. Okay. So there are underlying cognitive, especially attentional mechanisms, and they would provide a better understanding of these paradoxical outcomes. Because they argue the explanation for the contradictions remain unsatisfactory. And what are the contradictions? The effectiveness of the messages of guilt are sometimes ambivalent. So they're kind of talking about what I was talking about, that people feel guilty, but like they don't do anything about it. So like, what is that? Oh yeah, social value. Dude, social value it really is most of what I talk about in terms of worth and honesty and evaluation. Most of our measurements, most of our yardsticks for what makes us a person that is good or bad come from social constructs and social value. Social value is so important because it's like the things that make it so you're worthwhile to the rest of the people here. So if like society was a room of 100 people and you're one of those people and there's enough resources to make like a few of those people very wealthy and there's enough resources to make a few of those people pretty miserable, whether or not everybody agrees that you're one of the people that deserves misery or wealth comes from your demonstrated behavior. Hey, Jay Holloway just subscribed on Twitch. Thank you very much. Look at that dinosaur. Thanks for that, Jay. You didn't have to do that, but thank you for doing that. Now you have access to all those emotes, including the R2D2 emote, which I am showing you right now live. And it's the actual mug, but you can use that as well as the other emote that we have on there. So thank you for that. But social value is that it's a demonstrated ability. It's a demonstrated set of behaviors and beliefs. That's how it goes. So that's kind of I talk about social value a lot because it's the reality. It doesn't matter if you like it. It doesn't matter if it's moral. It doesn't matter if it fits into your religious values. It is what it is. It is the world that we live in. We live in this place that has rules, and it has people who make more and people who make less. It has people who take away. And that's why I talked about murder as an example. You stole the value of a whole human being and everything that they were going to be capable of, everything they've ever were going to do. You stole that from society. So that is a huge net negative to society. If you are a person who takes lives, even one, your entire life may not be enough to undo that. So you would have to figure out ways to promote and save another life, maybe, as your contrition. But there is a way to measure that. I hope so too, man. I thank you for the support, and I really hope that things get better for you too. I really do, and I hope that I can help you with that. So yeah, it's not so much a moral standing. It's not like it's not my principles. It's not my beliefs of whether or not somebody's valuable. It's factually in this reality that we find ourselves in. There is a measurement that everybody has to fit in, and that value is not monetary. It's behavioral. And it, like I was talking about mods, for instance, on Twitch and on YouTube. Like, mods are unsung heroes. They're saints. They do things for nothing. They just for the satisfaction of the stream going well, and that's a huge social value, especially in communities. Like I was on I Am Fetus's channel yesterday, pretty late because I fell asleep early and then I was staying up late, and he was having a rough time, and then there were people who were just kind of dogpiling, and then the moderators came in and swept it up and made it so it was a positive chat. And we had a great time. I mean, I was on there for a couple hours. I was going to go to sleep, and then I got hyped because it was just like this guy came in and he dropped 100 subs, and it was awesome. It was just a great time, and those moderators made part of that happen. So they added social value, even though it wasn't something monetary that they contributed. There are all kinds of ways for you to promote positivity and help bring value to yourself in a society. It's not just financial. However, that being said, there are ways in which we take away from others. We drain from others, whether that's emotionally or financially or logistically. Like, there's all kinds of ways we manipulate other people to take away from themselves to give to us for our gain. And so that's what I'm talking about. There may be a feeling that you're doing that, but I think it's more of an evaluative thought, and it's a fact of the matter that you are or you are not. And so it doesn't really require so much an emotion of guilt, so much as a process of finding yourself guilty. And guilt, if we look back at the definition of guilt, it is the fact of having committed a breach of conduct, especially violating law, or I would say cultural standards, cultural norms, agreements between people, unspoken agreements between people, policies, things like that. It is a fact of the matter that you've breached that. And not to be too ancient Roman here and being totally legalistic, but there is a fact of the matter that you could be guilty even if you don't feel bad about it. I mean, maybe you are in fact guilty of a crime and you don't feel bad about it. I find this is true with a lot of people when it comes to stupid laws. They break the law and they don't feel guilty. They don't feel bad about it, but they're in fact guilty. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you don't, you would take financially over emo-. Yeah, of course. I mean, like, and I understand your situation, Jay. Like, you can't always give financially. You can only give what you can give. And so this is, again, it's one of those things where, like, this is something that people have to wrestle with themselves. Everybody has to look at themselves in the mirror and decide, am I doing something that is taking away or adding? And if you're adding, great. If you're taking away and you feel bad about it, again, are you beating yourself up to feel better about yourself because you feel like you're not doing something you know you should be doing? That's self-serving. But if you're evaluating honestly that you're guilty of something and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go commit contrition. I'm going to do things that are going to undo some of the bad. That's remorse. Remorse is different than guilt. I think there are better words we can be using. We should be expanding our emotional vocabularies and using the correct words for what's going on inside. That's all. That's what I'm saying here. It's not that you can't feel guilty. Actually, kind of is that I kind of don't think you can feel guilty. I think you can objectively know whether or not you are guilty. I don't think it's a feeling, but I think remorse is a feeling you can have. I think fear of consequences is a feeling you can have. I think depression is a feeling you can have if you think that you're lower quality than you could be. And I think that not all of these things are bad. Some of these things are good. Yeah, I mean, so beating yourself up mentally since 2016. Let me challenge you, Jay, and maybe challenge everybody else here. If you have found yourself to be beating yourself up for years and years and years, maybe instead of just taking the beating, you stand up for yourself against yourself when you're beating yourself up and say, I don't need to keep hearing this. I don't need to keep taking this abuse. I'm going to do something differently. And then you can't, and you're speaking to yourself, you can't beat me up about that anymore because you'll see that I'm doing better. I'm doing more. I'm doing differently. I'm doing the best I can. That's got to be enough. So leave me alone. Again, you're talking to yourself. And then leave yourself alone because you see yourself every day. You get up and you do what you can. Every day, at the end of the day, you evaluate yourself. You see you did what you could do. You see you did a little something differently. Doesn't have to be that you're Superman, but you did differently than yesterday. You did better than yesterday. You did something that you didn't think you could do 2 days ago. You stopped yourself from doing something that you didn't want to do. And be proud of that instead of beating yourself up over what you couldn't do or what you didn't do. That's being fair. You can be adjudicating. You can be discerning. You can see the facts of the matter that you're not where you want to be, and still you don't have to engage in the process of guilt because you can instead engage in the process of growth, change. It doesn't require more money. It doesn't require feeling better. It requires a decision to try something else. That's what it requires. And I challenge you all to look yourself in the mirror and do that, say that, and then leave yourself alone and watch you grow, watch you change, and do what you can every day to make your life a little bit better. That's what I think about guilt. That's what I think about feelings versus thoughts. I appreciate you guys being here today. I want to thank Jay. I want to thank Nightmare Gamer for being here and hanging out. Thank everybody who is here in the long term. And if you're watching this later and you are going through the comments section, I appreciate everything that you have to say about this. Again, clip the things that you feel like you want to clip. Happy to have those on as separate videos on YouTube. You can find me on YouTube at The Life Coach. If you search Holistic Life Consultants, usually you can find me right there. And subscribe, please. You can find me on Twitch, if you're not there already, at The Life Coach Twitch. And you can find me on Instagram, on The Life Coach Insta. Deal with people say I'm a good person. I don't look at myself like that. If it makes sense, I look at myself and see a bad guy. Yeah, and I hope that what I said today, Nightmare Gamer, rings some truth to you and that you can attempt this. Seeing a psychiatrist now, since my primary doctors want to manage my stress and severe anxiety and my antidepressant meds as well. Dude, you're in the process every day. You're in the trenches, Jay. You're working. You're fighting. You're trying to get everything you can out of every day. I see that. I see that, man. So be proud of that effort. You too, Nightmare Gamer. Be proud of the efforts that you're making. You don't have to be satisfied with where you're at, and that hunger is what's going to keep you going. But what I recommend is to not allow yourself to say guilt is just a feeling and it's an acceptable one at that. Call it what it is. You're being mean to yourself, and knock it off. You're better than that. You heard that from me. Thank you guys for being here today. I hope that you all have a wonderful Tuesday evening. I will be back here Wednesday, tomorrow, Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. We'll be talking about something else that is hopefully just as controversial and fun. I hope to see you guys here. I hope to see you, Jay. I hope to see you, Nightmare Gamer, and everybody else who has been here today. I appreciate you. I love you, most of you anyway. Probably all of you. And I will see you all tomorrow. Hold up. I know I was just ending the stream, and it was a nice little outro, but Sin City Boss Rocks just showed up, so I gotta say hi. It's been a while, man. It's great to see you. Holy crap, I hope you're doing great. I hope the move was good, and you're still where you moved to, and that the weather's better, and that life is better. Miss you, man, and I had to do a specific shout-out. It's just great to see you. And anybody who is watching, if you want to go and check out Sin City Boss Rocks on Twitch, feel free to do so. He plays games. He is a musical historian. In real life, he actually has hung out with real bands that have done great things. And he's just really interesting to listen to and talk to. And he's very interactive with chat and just a great guy. So feel free to check him out. Check out Nightmare Gamer 23 as well. He is on Twitch as well. And I check him out on PS4. We're friends on there. And yeah, these are some great people. They're part of our community. And I really hope that we continue to grow. So anyway, I'm going to do that outro, but I had to say hi to Sin because he was on here. So yeah, Sin's stories are awesome. Please jump on there, give him a follow, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.